Some local authorities in China are looking at one thing that may increase the spread of the virus, and they are taking rather drastic actions against it. Today, a new report reveals China's leader Xi Jinping knew about the spread of the coronavirus before January 7th, when officials were told to downplay the severity of the situation. After co-signing an open letter to the National People's Congress, China's human rights activists were summoned by local police.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm your host, Tiffany Meyer. Questions are now being raised about how information about the coronavirus is being communicated to the public. At the end of December, a Chinese doctor warned that the disease could be passed from person to person, but he was silenced by police. We now know that China's leader, Xi Jinping, knew about the seriousness of the coronavirus before January 7th. He told officials to take measures against it back then, but did not mention human-to-human transmission. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, on January 20th, that human-to-human transmission was officially confirmed. Why did officials downplay the severity of the coronavirus for at least 2 weeks? On January 27th, Wuhan's mayor said he knew it was a contagious disease, but had to wait for official permission to disclose this to the public.
那作为地方政府，我只获得这个信息以后。 授权以后，我才能披露。
Xi Jinping told officials to focus their containment efforts in two places, Hubei province and Beijing. These areas are now in a so-called people's war against the virus. But by the time Wuhan, the capital of Hubei province, was put under lockdown, several million people had already left the city to travel around the world. These people could have been carrying the virus. This raises the question, if officials hadn't downplayed the situation, could the epidemic have been prevented? Some have speculated that downplaying it was an effort to save the economy. According to one Twitter post, quote, "Now that Xi Jinping has personally asked people to return to work, this is his last massive gamble." Xi Jinping has also admitted that the epidemic is having a negative impact on China's economy. To stop the virus from spreading, China is now burning money. That's right. According to Chinese media, local authorities in Guangzhou say the virus can spread as paper money is passed from person to person. So now all banks in the area are ordered to send money they collect from hospitals, food markets, or public transport systems back to Guangzhou's central bank. The central bank will then destroy it. Banks are told to use new banknotes when giving out cash. Banks are told to use new banknotes when giving out cash. After the death of the coronavirus whistleblower, Chinese people are now demanding freedom of speech. Over 2,500 people signed an open letter to authorities calling for it. The co-signers include prominent professors from China's top universities and independent human rights activists. Some who signed the letter were then threatened or summoned by the police. The letter comes after the death of a Wuhan doctor who first alerted the public to the coronavirus, Dr. Li Wenliang. He was silenced by the authorities and later died after contracting the virus. His death triggered a rare public backlash against Chinese authorities. The letter says not having freedom of speech is the most damaging thing for a society. Co-signers demand February 6th, the day Dr. Li died, be made Freedom of Speech Day. They also demand freedom of the press. After the letter was sent, human rights activists like Zhang Lifang and Zhuang Lei of Fujian province were summoned by the police. To contain the coronavirus outbreak, Beijing officials said that Friday, anyone returning to the capital needs to stay at home for 14 days. Those who refuse to follow the rules will be punished. Most companies in Beijing will resume work next Monday. State media quotes a Beijing virus prevention group as saying, quote, "From now on, those who return to Beijing have to stay at home or be put in group quarantine for 14 days. Those who refuse to stay at home to accept group quarantine, along with other prevention and control measures, will be held accountable under the law." Anyone returning to Beijing needs to submit their travel record to authorities. It didn't specify whether the same rule applies to foreign visitors. And the latest on the global updates on the coronavirus spread, reports of the first European virus death. Health officials announced on Saturday that a Chinese tourist who tested positive for the virus has died in France. According to local media, Malaysia has confirmed the first case of coronavirus involving the Westerdam cruise ship. The patient is an 83-year-old U.S. citizen. Likewise, Egypt has announced its first confirmed case on Friday. It's the first on the African continent. The Japanese government is increasingly worried about the outbreak in their country and saying the situation has changed. Its neighbor China says that unlike before, it is now hard to detect how the virus spreads. At least 5 areas in the country have reported cases where the trajectory of the infection cannot be traced, making it hard to effectively quarantine it and implement other preventative measures. 67 more new cases were confirmed on the Diamond Princess cruise ship today. The cruise has more than 3,600 passengers quarantined on board. It's been docked in Japan since earlier this month. It's now the largest outbreak outside of mainland China. Over 400 people on board are Americans, and at least 24 of them tested positive for the virus. The U.S. government is preparing to evacuate Americans from the ship. A German doctor who advises hospitals spoke to the German Epoch Times on how to stay safe amid the risk of catching the coronavirus. Let's get more on this.
Dr. Klaus-Dieter Zastrow is specialized in hygiene. He supervises and advises hospitals on how to prevent infections. Dr. Zastrow stresses that without any existing vaccine or valid therapy, prevention is paramount.
Strictly speaking, there's nothing we can do. It is actually only possible to prevent the virus from spreading by taking hygiene measures. That is, protective measures.
Dr. Zastrow explains how the virus spreads and about the main safety procedures.
Transmission happens in droplets, which you get either directly on your face, which face masks help with, or indirectly, through smear infection. When someone sneezes vigorously on the tabletop, and then you touch it and then touch your mouth. And we do all that frequently. Then you should disinfect your hands. Washing your hands is not enough in this case.
Opinions are divided about the effectiveness of face masks. Dr. Zastrow indicates a mask has a certain effect for one simple reason.
So it practically has 2 functions. First, that you don't pass the droplets to others, and that you don't pick them up because it acts as a barrier.
This week, Germany's health ministry confirmed the 16th case of infection, the most of any country in Europe. Almost all are employees of an auto parts supplier near Munich. An employee from China infected several colleagues while visiting the headquarters.
Dr. Zastrow also explains what to consider when eating food from China.
If these are really foods that come from regions like China, make sure to cook them well, because it is relatively easy to kill the virus with heat. I would also remove the peel of any questionable fruit and vegetables that might come from China.
Reporting by Susanna Ausich, Epoch Times Germany, and Christian Watchen, NTD News, Berlin.
Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.